Our next algebra lesson is quotients of polynomials. And our goal for this lesson is to find and simplify the quotients of polynomial expressions. Okay. Let's look at some of our examples. If we go to example number 3, we remember how if it says 570 divided by 19 equals 30, we know how to do the multiplication of it, or the division of it. Okay, we're following the same process as how we do polynomials. The first number is always going to go inside. So if I have, look at example number 4, if I have x squared plus 10x, okay, x squared plus 10x plus 21 divided by, so my first number always goes inside, divided by x plus 3. Okay, I'm going to look at the first one. What times x equals x squared? Well, I know that x times x equals x squared. So I'm going to put this over the second term. X times 3 is 3x. X times x is x squared. Now I subtract them. Remember, whenever I subtract, that means I have to change the signs, okay? So this is plus, it turns to negative. This is plus, so it turns to negative. Now I can subtract. These cancel out. So 10 minus 3 is 7x. Okay. Then I bring down the next term. Now I ask myself, what times x equals 7x? Well, I know x times 7 is 7x. So 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times x is 7x. Now to subtract them, remember you have to change the signs, and this cancels out and that cancels out. So my answer is x plus 7. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, it says x squared plus 10x plus 21, remember, divided by x plus 7. Look at the first term. What times x equals x squared? Well, x times x equals x squared. Remember to put it over the second term. Okay? X times 7 is 7x. X times x is x squared. And then to subtract, I have to change my signs. So instead of positives, these are going to be negatives. Then I can subtract. Those cancel out. 10 minus 7 is 3x. Then I bring down the next term. X times what is 3x? Well, I know x times 3 is 3x. So 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times x is 3x. And then to subtract, I have to change my signs. Those cancel out, those cancel out. So my answer is x plus 3. Okay. Alright, go ahead and go to show problems. And it says a squared plus 10a plus 9 divided by a plus 1. Okay, look at your first terms. What times a equals a squared? Well, a times a equals a squared. So I'm going to put it over the second term. A times 1 is a. Remember, we're still multiplying. A times a is a squared. And then when we subtract, we have to change the sign. So instead of these being positives, they're going to be negatives. 10a minus a, 10 minus 1 is 9a. Those cancel out. Okay, plus 9. A times what equals 9a? Well, a times 9 equals 9a. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times a is 9a. When we subtract, we change the signs. These cancel out, those cancel out. So my answer is a plus 9. Okay. Now I want you to do number 3 and then compare it with mine. So I want you to stop the tape and do number 3. Okay, let's see how we did. What times c equals c squared? Well, c times c equals c squared, and we put it over the second term. C times negative 5. A positive times a negative is a negative. 5 times c is 5c. C times c is c squared. And then to subtract, I have to change my sign. So this is going to be a negative. That's going to be a positive. Okay, now let's add them. 2 plus 5 is 7c. Those cancel out. Okay, so I bring down the next term. C times what is 7c? Well, c times 7 is 7c. 7 times 5 is 35. Positive times a negative is a negative. 7 times c is 7c. And then remember, to subtract, I have to change the signs. So this is going to be negative, and this is going to be positive. Okay? These cancel out, and those cancel out. So you should have come up with c plus 7. Okay? Alright. Go ahead and do number 5, and then compare it with mine. So go ahead and stop the tape and do number 5. Okay, let's see how we did. Now you're going to notice that it said 4g squared minus 9. Since there wasn't a g, we had to put a g. We just had to put a 0 by it. Because you have to have every term. This is g squared, so you have to have g to the first power. Okay? So they added it there and put a 0 there. Okay, so let's see how we did. 2g times what equals 4g squared? Well, 2 times what is 4? 2. G times what is g squared? G. So your first term should have been 2g. Okay, 2g times negative 3. I know I'm going to have a g here. 2 times 3 is 6. Positive times a negative is a negative. Okay, g times g is g squared. 2 times 2 is 4. And then when I subtract, I have to change my signs. So if I add this, this is 6g. These cancel out. Okay? Minus 9. 2g times what equals 6g? Well, 2 times 3 equals 6. Okay. 3 times 3 is 9. A positive times a negative is a negative. I have a g. 3 times 2 is 6. Now, to subtract, I have to change my signs. Okay. These two cancel out. Those two cancel out. So you should have ended up with 2g plus 3. Okay. Remember, before you subtract, you have to change your signs. Okay. I want you to go to number 7, solve number 7, and then compare it with mine. Okay? So stop the tape and do number 7. Okay, let's see how we did. Look at the first term. 5m times what is m squared? Do one at a time. 5 times what is 25? 105 times 5 is 25. And m times what is m squared? Well, m times m is m squared. And remember, you always put it over the second term. Let's multiply. 5m times negative 2. Well, positive times a negative is a negative. 5 times 2 is 10. And don't forget your m. Now let's multiply it times this. M times m is m squared. 5 times 5 is 25. And then remember, to subtract, you have to change your signs. So positive is going to be negative. The negative is going to be positive. Okay? Now let's go ahead and add them. 20 minus 10 is 10, because my signs are different, so I subtract. My larger number is negative. Anything plus its opposite cancels out. Okay? Bring down the next term. 5m times what equals negative 10m? Do one at a time. 5 times what is negative 10? Well, positive times a negative is a negative. 5 times 2 is 10. Don't forget. Okay. Now, I can't put an m there because there's already an m here. Okay? So a negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 5 is 10. Don't forget your m. And a negative times a positive is a negative. But in order to subtract, I have to change my sign. So this is going to be positive. That's going to be negative. Okay. Add the opposites means they cancel out. So you should have come up with 5m minus 2. Okay. Are you doing okay, or are you getting a little bit stuck? Just take your time. Do it one term at a time, okay? I want you to do number 9 and then compare it with mine, okay? So go ahead and do number 9. Okay, let's see how we did. Look at the first one. How many times does 4 go into 20? Well, it goes in there 5 times. We know we put it over the second term. P times what is P squared? Well, P times P is P squared. Okay, now let's multiply them. 5p times negative 7. Well, positive times a negative is a negative. 5 times 7 is 35, and don't forget your p. Alright, now let's multiply the next one. 5p times 4p. Well, 5 times 4 is 20. P times p is p squared. Okay, now in order to subtract them, I have to change my signs. Are you remembering to change your signs? My signs are different, so I have to subtract. My larger number is 35, and it's positive, so my answer is positive. 35 minus 31 is 4. Don't forget your p. These cancel out. Okay, so I bring down the next term, 4p minus 7. How many times does 4p go into 4p? What times 4 equals 4? Well, 1. So plus 1. 1 times negative 7 is negative 7. 1 times 4p is 4p. To subtract, I have to change my signs. Those cancel out and those cancel out. So you should have come up with 5p plus 1. Okay? You just have to take it one number at a time. Okay, go ahead and go to number 11. Go ahead and do number 11 and then compare it with mine. So stop the tape and do number 11. Okay, let's see how we did. You'll notice that the original equation said s cubed plus t cubed. But in order to do this, we have to add the ones that are missing. We have to have s squared, and there's s. Now you'll notice that the second variable counts up. The first variable, the exponents count down, 3, 2, 1. And the second variable counts up, 1, 2, 3. Okay? So let's go ahead and divide this and see how we did. S times what equals x cubed? Remember, subtract your exponents. 3 minus 1 is 2, so it would be s squared. Remember, it goes over the second term. Okay, now let's multiply them. S squared times t is s squared t. S squared times s, just add your exponents. 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay, and then we subtract. We subtract, we change our signs. Those cancel out. Okay, so 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Okay, s squared t. Okay, I bring down the next term, plus 0st squared. I put little lines in my s's so I don't get them mixed up with 5s. Okay, in algebra it's important if you're doing letters that you put something there so you don't mix them up with numbers, or use a different letter so you don't. Because if I would get this mixed up with a 5, I'd come up with a real ridiculous answer. Okay? S times what is the opposite of s squared t? Well, my signs are different and I'm dividing, so my answer is going to be negative. Okay, here I have to subtract my exponents. I have an s. 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay, don't forget my t. Okay, now let's multiply it. Negative times a positive is a negative. St times t. Oh, my marker doesn't want to work. St squared. Okay, a negative times a positive is a negative. St times s. Well, I have a t, and my s's, remember, I have to add the exponents. 1, 2. Okay. To subtract, I have to change my signs. These cancel out, and I have negative st squared, because remember, 0 minus 1 is 1. You can't see this, so 1 is larger, so I'm doing 1 minus 0. My larger number is 1, so my answer is negative. Bring down my next term, which is t cubed. Okay. F times what equals st squared? Well, first of all, my signs are different, so it's going to be negative. Okay. My s's, I subtract the exponents. I have 1 minus 1 is 0, so there's no s's there. But I have to remember I have a t squared here. So it's going to be times t squared. Okay, so let's multiply them. A negative times a positive is a negative. Let me think a minute. Yeah, negative times a positive is a negative. My marker isn't working. T squared times t, I add the exponents, I'm going to get t cubed. T squared times s, I'm going to get st squared. Okay, now remember I have to change my signs. Because, okay, and this, a negative times a positive is a negative. So now I have to change my signs. Okay. And then it says I messed up somewhere, so let me look. Okay. Well, let me look. Many times this s going to st squared, it goes into their negative times. Okay. Negative times a positive is a negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. Then I have to change my signs. And this is going to be 2t cubed. So apparently I messed up somewhere. Let me use a different marker. That marker's not working. Maybe that will help me. Let me do this last term again, because for some reason I'm messing up right here. Okay, if I subtract these, 1 minus 0 is 1. It's going to be negative st squared. And I bring down my next term, t cubed. And this is what it's disagreeing with. T squared times t is t cubed. Negative times a positive is a negative. T squared times s is the opposite of st squared. And it's saying to change my signs. When I do this, I'm getting 2t cubed. Okay. So I forgot to change my sign here. That's what's going on. Because I multiply these are negatives, and then I subtract, and these change to positives. So this is a positive. So that's going to be positive t squared. That's what's going on. Okay. So this is going to be plus and plus, and then I change my signs, and I have to change them both to minus. Okay. These are opposites, so they cancel out. These are opposites, so they cancel out. Okay? So you should have come up with s squared minus st plus t squared. Now, they're putting their ones in there, and those blanks, like here, I normally don't put the ones, but they're putting ones. That's why you have those green boxes, and you're like, well, what do I put there? They're wanting ones in all of those boxes. Okay? If you don't have to put the 1. If it counts it wrong, just leave me a note and I'll check that. I forgot to mention that. I think what messed me up is my marker was running out. Anyway, go ahead and go to number 13. Answer number 13 and then check it with mine, okay? Let's go ahead and do number 13. Just remember, this first term always goes inside. Okay, let's see how we did. Just look at the first terms. W times what is W cubed? Remember, subtract your exponents. 2 minus 1 is 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay, now let's multiply it. W squared times 4 is 4W squared. W squared plus W times W. Remember, add the exponents. 2 plus 1 is 3. To subtract, we have to change our signs. My larger number is 4, so it's negative. 4 minus 0 is 4. W squared, those cancel out. Okay, bring down your next term, plus 0W. W times what is negative 4W squared? Well, we'll do one at a time. I mean, negative 4. Remember, subtract your exponents. 2 minus 1 is 1, so I don't have to put the 1. So let's multiply. A negative times a positive is a negative. 4 times 4 is 16, and don't forget your W. Okay, negative 4W times W. Well, I have the negative 4. The W, add the exponents. 1, 2, so 4 squared. Okay, now let's subtract. Remember, to subtract, you have to change the signs. Okay, these cancel out. 0 plus 16 is 16W. Okay, then I bring down the next term. Okay, W times what is 16W? Well, it's going to be 16. So let's multiply it. 16 times 4 is 64. You could have used your calculator if you needed to. 16 times W is 16W. Remember, in order to subtract, I have to change my signs, and they both cancel out. Okay? I guess it actually wants a 0 down here. So you should have come up with W squared minus 4W plus 16. Okay? So you do these just like a regular division problem. Remember, your first number always goes inside. Don't forget, you have to have these exponents. If you don't have one, just put a 0 before them like I did. Right? Go ahead and go to number 15 and answer 15 and then compare it with mine. Okay? Let's go ahead and do number 15. Alright. Let's go ahead and see how we did. You'll notice that it said y to the 4th minus 1. But I have to have all the exponents. Remember, I have a 4, so I have to have a 3, a 2, and a 1. It didn't have 1, so I had to put zeros before them. Okay? Start from the beginning. Y times what is y to the 4th? Well, let's subtract the exponents. Man, my markers do not want to cooperate this morning. Subtract your exponents. 3 minus 1 is 2, so it's y squared. Let's multiply. Y squared times 1 Okay. I'm sorry. 4 times minus 1 is 3. Try a different marker. One of these has to work. Okay, so this should be y cubed. There we go. Y cubed times 1 is y cubed. Y cubed times y, just add the exponents. 3 plus 1 is 4. Okay, and then to subtract I have to change my signs. These cancel out. 1 minus 0 is 1. 1's larger, so it's negative. And since it's 1, I don't have to put it. The opposite of y cubed, and bring down my next term, plus 0y squared. Okay? How many times does y go into y squared? Y cubed. How many times does y go into y cubed? Subtract my exponents. 3 minus 1 is 2. A positive and a negative, if I'm dividing, it's negative. My signs are different. It's negative. Okay, so I have a negative times a positive is a negative. Y squared times 1 is y squared. Y squared times y, I have to add the exponents. 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay, now to subtract, remember I have to change the signs. This is a positive, so it changes to negative. This is a negative, so it changes to positive. Okay, so let's add them. Y squared plus 0 is y squared. Those cancel out because they're opposites. I bring down the next one, plus 0y. Okay, look at the first term. Y times y equals y squared. Well, y times y. Okay, so let's multiply it. Y times 1 is y. Y times y, just add the exponents. I have 1, 2. Now to subtract, I have to change the signs. These cancel out. Okay. 1 minus 0 is 1. My larger number is 1, and it's negative. Since it's 1, I don't have to put it, even though I think it wants it on your computer. Minus 1. Okay. Here we go. Positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative. Because when you divide, if your signs are different, then it's negative. Y times y is y. Well, y times 1 is y. So let's multiply it. A negative times a positive is a negative. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times y is y. And a negative times a positive is a negative. To subtract, I have to change my signs. So you should have come up with y cubed minus y squared plus y minus 1. Okay? Go ahead and take your time and review that lesson, and then go back and answer your questions. Okay? So go ahead and finish that lesson.